start now.
And this is a conversation.
Yeah, and I really appreciate all of you coming together for a few minutes. What we're trying to do is to introduce to the camera some of our real stars in NTL, people who have been here for many, many, many years. And we've prepared some questions to ask you to share with them. They will be doing this 4-month online training program, and then we'll have face-to-face time with each other. So I'd like to start by just having each of you introduce yourself. I realize I didn't introduce myself. I'm Sue Reese-Lamb, and I've been a member since the 80s, and my passion is human interaction laboratories and the transformation that happens. And you are?
I am Lee Butler, and I have been a member since the 80s. God. Scary. And my passion also is the HI lab.
Human interaction labs,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, I'm Barbara Brewer, and I've been a member. This is my 41st year as a member of NTL. And my passion, absolutely, is the human interaction lab.
Do we have a pattern here?
My name is Patricia Williams, and I have been a member for 20 years, and I'm passionate about the HI lab.
My name is Howard Lamb, and I've been a member since 1967.
Oh,
What does that mean?
Oh my
We'll do the math afterwards.
Yeah.
A young guy.
Yeah,
49 years.
49 years.
Yeah.
Rick Huntley, I've been a member since 2003, and I joined my colleagues with human interaction. That's been my passion.
I'm Cathy Royal, and I've been a member since the late 80s. I'm passionate about the human interaction labs and the work we do for transformation.
And I'm Jacki Bearce. I've been a member of NTL for about 35 years, and I too have a passion for the human interaction lab.
So now you understand why I asked you all to come and be a part of this, because hopefully we're going to generate a lot of passion among the new people who are going to be going through this program. So I'm going to start. I'm going to ask you to keep your answers pretty brief, but we'll take one question at a time. So first, can you think of one or two ways, maybe one, in which your T-group trainer style has changed over time? Howard?
Some 50-odd years ago, the trainer role was to absolutely have nothing to do with the group. Not even to set up guidelines at sometimes. And there was a group of us, not necessarily, that unless you were thrown out of the group, you were not a successful T-group trainer. Was true. So as history changed, we got more and more women into T-groups who had been into women's groups. And in women's groups, of course, you start with your story, which is the antithesis of what you need to do in a T-group. So I found myself as a white male chopping off, nicely I hope, but women telling their stories so that we could move into the thing. So that was a really significant change in the way I had to work.
I'll go next. I've become more active over the years because we don't have T groups that are as long.
Yeah.
So we used to often say virtually nothing for the first 3 or 4 sessions, and I don't do that anymore. And a piece of that is I am very keen on supporting participants in deciding how they want to experiment that week with new behaviors. So whatever their dilemma is, how could you experiment with that this week while you're here?
I again have been a member since 2003, and the best way I describe my change has been is coming in doing T groups really focused only on the interpersonal, and now realizing the power of people becoming a group in order to do the interpersonal work. That's really key for me.
Lee?
I said how long I've been around.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing, I'm not gonna be any different from any of those I've heard here,
Mm-hmm.
has been the T-Group.
Mm-hmm.
And what can I say that's different? What I have learned about the T-Group and what I can do to have an impact over time. When I say it that way, I mean, as you go from 1 year doing a T-Group or two, and another year, another, and what do you do, what happens as a consequence of having spent all that time? What's different? And the thing that I know that has said that the T group is a very powerful tool that, when properly done, can be something that impacts your whole life, because
Thank you.
it has it has a way of saying, okay, given what's going on in whatever that thing is in the world out there, what are you feeling and what do you see going on out there? And what do you want to do about it, if there's something you can do about it?
Okay, thank you. That's great.
Yeah, as the timeframes for human interaction labs have changed, it certainly has impacted my style. I find myself, while I tend to be more group focused,
Yeah.
With interpersonal as a secondary, also having these in the moment didactic sessions in the middle of the T group, trying to fit all the learning opportunities or all the topics in a way that's going to make sense, in a way that's going to be timely.
Over the years, I think the way my work has changed with T groups is really becoming very comfortable with not saying anything and not intervening. My training is to ask a person questions and try to pull that information to be supportive. And in watching the T group form, just really being very comfortable with listening and watching and observing. And I'm also aware that the length of time for the T group is shortened, so that's very important that I am able to really stay in trainer role and not intervene and watch what happens.
Well, for me to build on that, I think knowing how shortened the T groups are, I'm so aware of trying to do only group level interventions. If I do anything in those first, and I share what you're saying, Patricia. I think I'm more active than what I was originally. The other thing I'm thinking about too is how, because of my learning in the areas of diversity and inclusion, how much more aware I am and still trying to be more and more knowledgeable about all that's happening from a diversity and inclusion perspective.
And just as a time check, we are 9 minutes into this, so.
The way my style has changed, at least that I'm aware of. One is I don't sit on, with my creaky bones, I don't sit on the floor anymore. I used to think it was absolutely a rule and critical to sit on the floor. I don't sit on the floor anymore, and my participants sometimes do and sometimes don't. But if I do, I can't get up, so I don't do it. And I think that my biggest change, though, is I now trust groups. I used
Trust
to
the
think
process.
I trust the process, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
And as my mentor, Elliot Aronson, said, whatever happens in a group is okay as long as it gets processed.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
I in these 40 years of doing at least one T group every year, I struggle with that, and I think I'm not there yet. because sometimes I just wanna a little bit. But I think those are changes.
Okay, the next question, maybe you have something, maybe you don't, but something that got in your way as a T-group trainer that you had to work with to overcome.
And I can do that one because it's really short. I wanted to trust the process, but I didn't, and I wanted to make
yeah.
it happen, and
Yep.
I really got better.
I join you in that.
I could join you with that, but I was thinking specifically, my own discomfort with conflict used to be, I would hesitate, I would get nervous when there was conflict, and I would also hesitate to challenge when I think something needed to be challenged, and I feel really good about having gotten much better at that.
I don't know that it's an overcome, but when we did have 2-week T groups, you could play around more.
Yes.
And so I did a lot of
Yeah.
getting people to do things with each other that, were, they would just don't do. So I just don't do that anymore because I don't have the time.
Yeah.
And I miss that.
Oh, yes.
I miss
Yes.
that.
I could go on forever on little things that
I think what I've overcome is allowing persons to have their own process in the T group, namely people who are silent, takes a while for them to get in. How do I not rush them into their process? Because invariably what happens, those persons who talk the least get some of the greatest learning by the end of the T group. So just being patient with how people develop over the course of the T group.
I resonate with what Rick's saying and also what Barbara was saying around trusting the process and value. I think at some point, really want to see this group go from A to C, I guess, and knowing that people have their own time and space, and my job is to provide that in a safe environment.
I used to, in terms of conflict, I used to let diversity conflict or cross-identity conflict go as long as it would in the system or in the group. And I have come to discover that sometimes that was really getting in the way of one person's learning or one person's safety. And so now, as we advance in the group, with getting enough data to be able to say, here's what we're seeing as it relates to power and privilege. Are you aware? And so actually asking for that towards the middle of the group, rather than letting it go and seeing what's going to happen as a safety.
And that's a great example of what I meant when I said my own fear of challenging the group would keep me from stepping in. And now I realize how valuable it is.
And I like doing that, to your point, Barbara, in the group. So the side conversation is one that may help the person, but it doesn't help the group. So the work of that then becomes part of the group's work, and then I can step out.
I think that I'm going to hurry with this. I think I've overcome being jealous. No, I'm not.
We never do.
I've trained as a partner of Jack Gant for years, and his group always cried on Tuesday. Mine never cried.
Not till Thursday.
No, but your group's always got to kumbaya. And I'm always saying, Jack, don't let your group cry.
Okay, that's gonna count as your standout memory, okay? Because I'm gonna move us to the next question. And I'm gonna ask, can you think of one memory that you just go, oh,
Or
yes.
something that amazes
Yeah, something that you amazed you.
Oh, do I have to be first on
Yeah,
that one?
yeah.
Boy, I need to think about that.
All right, I'll let you. Do you really need to?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I'm not ready to.
Okay, all right. So something that amazed you or standout memory for you. Go.
There was this wonderful young woman in our T group, and I had a T group training, I won't say that, but
Yeah.
things had been going on, and she had been being treated like the baby in the group, or the youngest in the group, because she was a young participant. And so, people would dismiss her or say something and, talk over her. And finally, one moment, she got up, stood in the chair, and started pointing into the group saying, I'm here, and this is what I'm saying, and this is how I feel. And so in that moment, I thought, go girl. And then I thought, oh my God, I got to get her out that chair before she falls. But it was
That could be a
such a
critical
moment.
incident.
And I'm like, I am not writing critical incident reports, so you got to get out of that chair. But it was was such a moment of coming into her own voice and own power. And she was like, I am here. You're going to listen to me. And come out the chair.
The moment I have is less dramatic, but just as earnest, and it was a group that we shared, Sue, and this was a group where all the participants were white, and Sue being white, I was the only person of color, African American in the room. And this moment when there was some work that needed to be done, they wanted to do really seriously, and they wanted me in.
Yeah.
And Sue and I looked at each other, negotiated with each other, and made a decision that I would take my facilitator hat off momentarily, time bounded, did some work with them, put my facilitator hat back on, and went on. And it was really, really developmental for the group. They really needed that.
It was so important.
This was back in the 2 week flat, and I don't want these people who are watching this to ever do it. But,
Not to
Take your clothes off.
yeah, well, there was one of those.
Different video.
Different video. I had a woman who did not speak for the first 3 days. And I couldn't understand it, and I wasn't gonna talk to her outside, this was, being me. And I had a very verbose young man. And so I had them line up non-verbally and approach each other, becoming aware of what they were feeling, because I was at least gonna get a feeling out of her and a feeling out of his verbosity. They came up, the tension was incredible. They touched, and she started crying. She says, "You are the first non-Jewish man I have ever touched."
Wow.
And we got into a discussion on that. It just didn't stop. But it was just, who would have known? But not to do it anymore.
Mine was easy. My first solo T group was an absolute disaster. It fell apart, people left. It was the most horrible experience and an incredible learning experience for me and the other two, the dean and the other people in the lab. And once that happens, nothing could shake me after that. It was so horrible.
Oh, wow.
Well, I was doing a lab in the northern part of the country I was in, where it's cold. And there was this one person who worked a man who worked in an industry where he was by himself a lot. I'm not sure what he did. And it was cold. And he referred to himself as the Iceman. And both in terms of, this is who I am, and he it was kind of difficult to connect with him because he was just really closed off. Something happened, and I was facilitating this group by myself. So something happened in the group where this man walked out of the room. So then the decision is what do I do? I'm by myself and someone has walked out. So what I did was had one of the other participants go get him. And I stayed with the group. We talked about working through and so forth. So he came back and something happened, I guess, in the hallway. These two men bonded with each other. And the Iceman kind of, as he called himself, thought And, was able to really connect with this person that went to get him, and they both ended up just really as wonderful contributors to the group. It did scare me a bit. Somebody walks out and I'm by myself. The choices that, what do I do and how do we, get the group back together?
I'll tell a really quick one about timing. I had an apprentice trainer with me, and the person was pretty risky. He was willing to, I was going to say, anyhow, the person was willing to try anything, and we had talked about various things, but the timing issue, it was the last night of the lab, and he suggested a power and influence line to see how, and so when you said that about this, I was thinking, how do I value him and how do I manage the situation? And so that was one of the most difficult moments for me. And we got through it okay without doing a power.
You might want to say why that would be a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
Because you don't have time to close things down. When you do something that asks people to say, where are they in the group and how do you see me in the group, you have to have lots of time to process that
It's very provocative.
before you say goodbye.
So could I do
No, we need to move, sorry.
I want to see if I can scoot it down. here.
Okay, go for it. Because I am going to ask you each to give one piece of advice. If you could just give one piece of advice to people who are going into the training program.
I'm gonna say work all three levels. I think they're all so connected, the interpersonal, and the group. And whatever your bias is, make sure you're addressing the other one or two, because I don't believe we can just work at one.
I say, know yourself,
Well,
do your work, know where you get hooked, and have a co-trainer, a peer trainer that you trust, and they know where you get hooked, and work as a team. Yeah, but know yourself.
Yeah, and I'm going to build on that and something you said earlier, Patricia, and that is see conflict as just is, and to be able to know yourself well enough and to allow the group to be in conflict in a way that is manageable and you facilitate it, but it's an important part of the process for learning.
It's all about learning.
It's all about learning.
for me, it's remembering that we're planting seeds and that the outcome for the T group is not change necessarily, but it's learning. Provide opportunities for people to experiment, and people learn at their own pace.
Yes.
And for me, it's trust the process. You just have to do that. Even with groups that tend to fall apart, there is a learning in that process.
Are you sort of agreeing with that one?
Oh, I agree thoroughly with that. I think that to do that at the early stages of it, I find myself asking, are you sure you know what you're doing here? However, I find that as I get to a certain kind of point in that process, things begins to say, there are some questions now that will make sense. And things will
And emerges even within us.
move in a different way. Yeah.
Oh,
I want to just add to the use of self, and in preparation for doing a human interaction lab, I think it's also important for you to do that self-reflection about where am I right now in my understanding of me, so that you don't get surprised by what someone else says to you in terms of the group giving you feedback, and you can hold it in a way that is helpful for you, because I love doing them because I grow.
Mhm.
And each group
Sure.
tells me something else about me that I can check out and go, yeah. But if I'm grounded coming in and having done that piece of self-reflection, to know who and be careful about who I fall in love with in a group. And,
Yeah.
and make sure that I am clear about, oh, that's not George, that's a participant, so the George in me.
And I really want to support this growth in us. I mean, we do grow doing groups.
We do.
So, and I love all that I've heard. I think the only thing that's coming up to add to this, for me, is being open to outcomes, as opposed to having a sense of the way it should happen, what should happen for him and her, and just totally trusting the process, but being open to new outcomes for myself as well as for everybody else.
Charlie C. Sure used to say to us all the time, be open to outcome, but not attached to outcome.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank all of you. You have one last story. Good. You want to tell your funny story?
Oh, it wasn't funny.
Oh.
It was-
I have a quickie that I think would be useful.
Okay.
Someone from my AUNTL class wrote a paper about her HI lab in which she said she totally copped out. She didn't participate authentically in the lab. She did all her work like in the evenings with people outside of the lab. She was petrified. And this was 6 months later. And she was ready to do her work. And so when we have someone that we feel like we've, quote, failed because someone didn't engage, we never know what seed we planted. That I've always wondered, you know, I'm sure her HI T-Group trainers felt lousy that she wasn't really there, but eventually she was. So
I had the same experience, so I want to support that.
maybe it was the same one.
Let me
She's
just
right.
quickly check and see, are there any last words of wisdom for these folks?
Let go of power, predictability, and
And
performance.
performance, yes.
And know that you're on the greatest journey that you can possibly get on, and it lasts a lifetime, and it never gets boring, and it never gets old.
Oh, amen.
Yep.
And that every time you are with a group of people, you are contributing to social justice because they are growing themselves and therefore going to be able to be agents of change out there with others too.
Oh, so I did have one important thing.
Go for
And
it.
learn the theory.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Learn the theory, yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
The theory is your friend.
well, thank you all so much
Thank
for
you.
being a part
Thank
of
you.
this.
It's fun.
And thank you, Alan.
Yes.
Yes.